In a world where nuclear diplomacy is measured in whispers, back-channel visits and hidden procurement networks, a new dossier from Western intelligence has cast fresh light on a troubling sideline of the global arms control architecture. According to investigative reporting, Iranian scientists linked to the country's nuclear weapons research arm travelled to Russia in late 2024, and their mission may have been far more consequential than publicly acknowledged. The group in question included researchers affiliated with Iran's Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research, known by its Persian acronym SPND. That entity, established in 2011 and subject to US and European sanctions for proliferation-sensitive activity, is widely judged to be Iran's principal vehicle for weapons-relevant nuclear work. SPND's mandate and footprint have been extensively scrutinized by non-proliferation analysts. Its budget is exempt from parliamentary oversight, and it is legally subordinate to the Supreme Leader's command structure. Key to this disclosure is the revelation that in November 2024, a delegation of Iranian research staff traveled using diplomatic passports to St. Petersburg, Russia, and held meetings with Laser Systems, a Russian company under US sanctions for the development of laser and optical technologies, with both civilian and classified military applications. The meeting was arranged via a procurement front, Damavantech, described in US sanctioned documents as a front for SPND. The Financial Times, which first exposed the November visit, reports that the visitors sought what one former CIA analyst described as laser technology and expertise that could help them validate a nuclear weapon design without conducting a nuclear explosive test. The significance of such a capability is hard to overstate. If true, Iran may have sought to accelerate its weapons design timeline by bypassing full-scale explosive testing altogether. Russia's involvement adds a worrying dimension. While Moscow has publicly opposed a nuclear-armed Iran, the meeting provides the strongest publicly available evidence that Russian institutions may be cooperating with Iranian scientists on knowledge that could feed a weapons capability. The Russians, as one analyst put it, appear at least tacitly willing to share technology that crosses the dual-use boundary. The Iranian side, for its part, insists its nuclear program is peaceful. Tehran says that this series of meetings is simply part of a broader technological collaboration and rejects claims of weapons intent. But the weight of indirect evidence from travel records, sanction filings, and corporate linkages is steadily mounting. This story unfolds against a backdrop of heightened regional tensions and faltering diplomacy. Iran's supreme leader recently declared that direct talks with the US over the nuclear issue were a sheer dead end. At the same time, uranium enrichment levels inside Iran have surged. The IAEA reported that by early 2025, Iran had accumulated some 274.8 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, a figure far above civilian power requirements and inching close to weapons-grade thresholds. Several questions demand answers. Why did Iran go to Russia? What technology did it procure? How solid is the evidence of transfer? And what are the implications for the region and for US non-proliferation policy? Let's begin with the mission itself. The delegation travelled between November 7th and November 11th, 2024, according to documents reviewed by the Financial Times. The passports were consecutively numbered diplomatic travel documents issued by Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. During that trip, the scientists claimed to participate in a technological collaboration organized by the Russian firm Laser Systems. That company is under US export control designations precisely because it develops equipment for both civilian uses and classified military programs. The Iranian team claimed university affiliation, physicists and engineers from Shahid Beheshti University, Islamic Azad University of Kashan, and Malik Ashtar University of Technology. But analysts note that those institutions are already under sanctions or implicated in earlier proliferation cases. For Iran, the appeal of laser technology is clear. In weapons design parlance, high-powered lasers and optical systems serve several roles. They enable high-precision measurement of material behavior, allow simulation of the effects of nuclear detonations, and can be used for neutron and X-ray diagnostics that previously required full-scale nuclear tests. In short, they can compress the so-called test gap, the time between having fissile material and deploying a full weapon. A former CIA analyst, Jim Lampson, told the FT that the optics and laser expertise sought could help them validate a nuclear weapon design without conducting a nuclear explosive test. This is a red line for non-proliferation regimes because even if a state does not detonate a bomb, access to such validating technologies significantly reduces the barrier to weaponization. In this context, Russia's role becomes critical. While Moscow continues to participate in diplomatic processes with Iran, the meetings show that at a technical level there may be willingness in some quarters of Russia's defense industrial complex to engage with Iranian researchers. According to the reports, Andrei Savin, a former technical director at Laser Systems and now a senior academic at a Russian military technical university, traveled to Tehran in February 2025 to meet Iranian officials and Damavand Tech associates. That reciprocal trip underscores the bidirectional nature of the engagement and raises the possibility of ongoing cooperation beyond the November visit. From Iran's perspective, the narrative is more straightforward: technological progress, collaborations with friendly states, and the pursuit of scientific advancement. Iranian officials insist their nuclear program remains peaceful. The November trip, they suggest, was about civilian optics and laser science, not bombs. But the open architecture of export controls and procurement networks makes the distinction far blurrier than the rhetoric suggests. On the US side, policymakers are clearly concerned. The State Department in May 2025 announced new sanctions targeting 3 Iranian individuals and a company linked to SPND, saying the actions were designed to delay and degrade the ability of SPND to conduct nuclear weapons research and development, with the evidence of the Russian engagement US. Officials now point to Iran's reduced distance to a bomb design capability, even if actual bomb assembly remains technically difficult. Regional alarm bells are ringing. Iran's accumulation of enriched uranium, the suspension or limiting of IAEA inspections, and the recent covert Russia engagement all compound the threat picture for the Middle East. Israel, in particular, has conducted a sustained covert campaign of strikes and assassinations targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure and scientists. While the exact impact remains contested, many experts agree the threat is real and growing. What are the implications of this Russian-Iranian link? First, if Tehran receives advanced dual-use laser and optical systems from Moscow, whether via direct transfer or via know-how, its weapons design timeline shrinks. In practice, that means the breakout time, the time from decision to the bomb itself, becomes shorter, reducing the window for external detection or intervention. Second, the presence of a Russian partner complicates sanctions enforcement and export control regimes. It suggests state-level complicity beyond mere rogue actors. Third, for US and allied policy, this opens the question of whether diplomacy alone is sufficient. The technical substrate of Iran's weapons design capacity may now be more advanced than publicly assessed. In response, Washington and its partners face a complex calculus. Sanctions remain a tool, but enforcement is challenging when front companies, diplomatic cover, and multiple jurisdictions are used. Intelligence collection becomes harder when knowledge transfer rather than hardware transfer is the priority. Verification mechanisms, primarily under the IAEA mandate, are under strain, especially when access is restricted or delayed. For Tehran, the calculus is different. It retains the diplomatic cover of a peaceful nuclear program while advancing parallel research channels via SPND. Iran's public posture remains combative. In September 2025, the Supreme Leader declared that direct dialogue with the United States was a sheer dead end, reinforcing Tehran's strategy of deepening regional influence rather than seeking meaningful constraint. The region and the world are watching. A state that enriches uranium to 60%, holds more than 270 kilograms of that material, and potentially acquires high-end laser diagnostic technologies from a Russian firm represents a convergence of threat vectors, fissile material, weapons design expertise, and supplier-state engagement. The one missing piece, full bomb assembly and delivery, remains difficult but no longer remote. How might this situation evolve? One path leads to escalation. Iran accelerates its weapons design pace, uses advanced diagnostics to refine a design, and eventually threatens to deploy. That scenario would trigger deterrence responses from Israel, the US, Gulf states, and perhaps others. Another path leads to deterrence by opacity. Iran retains the latent capability, the so-called bomb in a drawer, and uses it as a strategic deterrent without publicly crossing the red line. A third path remains diplomatic containment, revived negotiations, stricter inspections, enhanced controls on dual-use technology, and a reformed non-proliferation regime. Yet the Russian connection complicates any of those pathways. It signals that Iran may not be acting alone and that supplier states remain willing to engage in weapons-relevant cooperation, even if surreptitiously. The traditional non-proliferation architecture assumes supplier states will avoid complicit cooperation. In this case, that assumption appears frayed. Policymakers may consider several concrete responses: shot-in-the-arm intelligence, sharing with allies, even deeper export control coordination to catch front companies such as Damavantech, and renewed diplomacy that focuses not just on uranium enrichment, but on the entire weapons design chain, including the laser and optical diagnostics now apparently at play. Regional states will press for stronger assurances and rapid intelligence transparency, but Iran, for its part, will likely continue to hedge. In one sense, what we see is a race, not simply between Iran and its adversaries over bomb capability, but between transparency and concealment, between knowledge diffusion and export control enforcement, between supply state complicity and technical isolation. The November 2024 trip offers a vivid snapshot of that race. Iranian physicists, Russian laser firm engineers, diplomatic passports, covert procurement links, and a dual-use technology that sits at the heart of modern weapons design. To be clear, there is no verified public evidence today that Iran has assembled a completed nuclear weapon or delivered it to a delivery system. The public domain still lacks proof of a bomb in the vault. But the trajectory is troubling. The accumulation of enriched uranium to near weapons grade, the expanded centrifuge deployment, the covert engagement with a Russian firm developing laser systems, and the sanctioned designations all point to the narrowing of weapons design timelines. The most productive policy path may lie in closing the knowledge gap as much as the material gap. Equipment and fissile material are important, but diagnosing and refining a warhead design, will it survive, will it deliver the yield, will it deploy, is exactly where laser diagnostics shine. If Iran gets there, the West and its allies will find the window for action closing. In the meantime, Tehran appears confident. Stated posture, rhetorical defiance, enrichment acceleration, and now technical procurement all combine to underpin a strategy of latent deterrence rather than open escalation. But that strategy only works if adversaries believe the latent capability is credible. The involvement of a Russian partner only helps bolster that credibility in the eyes of Iran's regional competitors and global adversaries. In short, the shadows of the nuclear world are deepening, and this time the shadows stretch from Tehran to St. Petersburg, from procurement front companies to laser beam laboratories, from diplomatic covers to potential weapon design breakthroughs. The question now is how swiftly the international community and its intelligence, sanction, and diplomatic tools can respond before the latent becomes overt.